stories like crazy. Because everyone has mental health, and everyone has a story. And sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers that share their true life story. Get in the conversation and talk with us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on SoundCloud and iTunes. Now, let's smash some stigma. This week we hear from Jamie Dew, the founder and creator of A Show of Strength, which is another fantastic podcast about mental wellness. And he has some fantastic events happening here in Toronto, all about mental health awareness. Let's listen to his story.
So I'm going to tell you about mental health being health and how I, came to be where I'm right now. And it starts during the summer of 2012. My father went to his doctor, and they discovered that he was pretty sick in terms of like a heart condition. And at this point, it had probably been, 5 or 6 years before I had been to any kind of doctor. And I'm fortunate to live in a neighborhood that's got a great walk-in clinic. And so when I did go to the doctor, I would just go to the walk-in clinic. I didn't have a doctor per se. But coming back from my father's appointment with the cardiologist, when they said, basically you are, this artery is 100% and this artery is 90% and clogged. And we're, really the only way to proceed here is for you to have bypass surgery. Coming from that, I started to think about my own physiological health, and it was tough for me because I have like white coat syndrome. I'm frightened of doctors. I had a GP growing up that I just wasn't really pleased with, and my mother still goes to him, and he's a God complex doctor, kind of. He's one of those, I can fix this. And it's like, some things aren't that easy to fix. We're going to need to talk about it or whatever. It's not just a script. So my father ended up going in to have the bypass surgery. And I said to him, my words of wisdom were, of course you're going to have this on the way back from the cardiologist. Of course you're going to have this surgery. Bypasses are dime a dozen at this point. The doctors do 2 or 3 of them in a day. They've got it figured out. They know what they're doing. He was somebody who had never spent any time in a hospital in his life. He had his tonsils out when he was 5 years old, and that was the extent of his hospitaling. He ended up having the surgery and didn't wake up from the surgery. He went into a coma, and he was in a coma for a few days, and it was really tough. He ended up coming out of the coma, but he was really rough shape. And the ending to that particular part of the story is he was in the hospital for about 3 months and didn't make it out. He died in January of 2013. And that was really tough. That was really tough on me. I went during the time that he was in the hospital to my daughter's family doctor, and I said, is there any chance you would follow me? And he said, yes, yes, I would, but we need to do baseline things. We're going to, do a physical and make sure that everything is good before I take you on. Not that I'm not going to take you on if you're not well, but I want you to commit to a physical if you're going to want me to follow you. And I said, well, while you're at that, I've had some stuff going on in my head, probably since I was a little kid. And I'd really like to get to the bottom of some of that as well. Can you recommend anybody to talk to? And he closed the door to the office and he sat down and he just talked to me. And we talked for probably 20 or 30 minutes. And again, this was a busy doctor's office. And we're in Toronto, and I grew up in a smaller community where you would think that that would happen, and it wouldn't happen here. But it did. I continued to see him for several weeks before he wrote any sort of prescription for an SSRI or anything to help me. You know, he didn't diagnose me on the spot. He worked with me, but while he did that, he also told me about his limitations, and he reached out to the various organizations in the city, CAMH being one of them, told me about some other places that I could go to get help, Michael Garron Hospital, to get a psychiatrist that could manage the meds more effectively than he could, he thought. He was just really helpful, and it really changed things for me. And that was the beginning of my journey with my mental illness and trying to get mentally healthy. And it's interesting because here we are now in 2018, and I'm feeling as well as I've felt in probably 10 years. And I said to my wife just the other day, I said, I guess I'm going to have to start processing and grieving my father's death now. And she looked at me sort of confused, and she was like, that's not something you've really dealt with. And it was, for me, it was a really interesting moment because it defined the difference between being depressed or grieving and depression. I wasn't in a place when he passed that I could have grieved properly or been as sad as I think I need to be at some point about him not being here. And it was his birthday. He would have been 73 on Wednesday, just this last Wednesday, the 13th of June. That was the first day I didn't do any social about it. I didn't, wish him a happy birthday, that kind of thing, because I just had my own day with it. I just experienced it myself. And that's sort of the end result of where I've come from. I've started a podcast called A Show of Strength. And A Show of Strength comes from SOS, distress. It's like a distress call that people would make at sea, and if they need help. And it's me expressing courage for those out there that are looking for their own courage to take their own first step, and hopefully meet somebody like a Dr. Lamb that will just sit with them and listen without judgment, and let them tell their story and let them begin the process of trying to get mentally healthy. So that's what I've got for you.
I like it. I like what you got for us here.
I do too, right? Yeah. Dig in. It's beautiful. I mean, first of all, it's terribly sad, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I know what that's like as an adult. My father passed short period of time. He had cancer, but there's something about the grieving that I really stuck to that when you were sharing, that I don't think people realize. And you put it perfectly about, there is this depression that comes with grief that is not the same thing as clinical or medical depression of the brain. And there are some people that never get to the point where you're starting to get to with the grieving process, because you can't ever be 100% well if you haven't dealt with some of that past pain, right? Just like any kind of trauma. And the death of a parent is trauma. I don't care how old you are. But to be able to see that and differentiate, Jamie, I think that there's probably a lot of listeners that might even be thinking, well, what do you mean? That was 5 years ago. Of course you have, because, you had your funeral and and now it's, and again, it's that kind of, on to the next, and sure, you have your memories, on to the next, but there is a very real emotional, mental process that has to take place in order for you to get to the other side. And I'm glad that you shared it, although you had to feel the pain. It's important, no?
Absolutely. I know that I'm struggling to communicate with my mother right now because she lost her brother to a car accident when she was quite young. I believe she was 18 years old when that happened. And being told, being a child, and also being in a world without hashtags, you know, back in the 70s and whatnot, and no encourage courage and no, you know, mental health is health, and like this new wave of acceptance, or at least more space for this kind of talk. It was very much well, that happened and now you get over it. And it's like, well, how do I get over it? You just do. And we are trying to find a language right now, because I lost my brother in very different circumstances, but still, that we are trying to communicate loss and understanding and going through grief. And for her, it's like 50 years later, because she was told to get over it and not process it, right? Like that there is a difference. And that what I hear from your story is this wonderful self-awareness that, holy crap, amazing. And when I say holy crap, amazing, I also acknowledge, holy crap, that's so hard.
Right. Yeah.
Like, because it's
not
process.
a breeze.
No, it's process, and it's unpacking, and it's allowing you to feel feels that are not great to feel. And also hearing that you are testing your boundaries and understanding your boundary, which is something that I admire from across this table, sir. Like, I am learning boundaries for the first time, and I'm 35. And it's fascinating and frustrating and liberating and restricting. Like, it's a complex thing that we can throw around these words like process your grief or boundaries. And it's like, it's not that succinct. It's not just a dictionary fucking definition. It's so complex and it's so deep, and it zaps your energy and it gives you energy. And that I'm so admiring that you are going on this journey, rather than the age-old bottle it up, put it on a shelf, and get over it, which I am witnessing through my family members who haven't gone there. So fucking kudos. Fucking kudos.
For sure. Because I think, you know, and you can't compare pain, right? You can't, regardless, you just can't compare pain. But there's almost this old kind of Victorian, if you can't see it, it's no longer painful. I mean, that's our way of getting through
out of
things.
sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, exactly. And this is one of the reasons too. I Father's Day coming up. That's my tough day. Not so much his birthday or any of those things. It's Father's Day, and that's the only time that I go to the cemetery. But even then, I don't know about you, but I feel my father all the time. So I don't actually have to talk to a headstone. And there's a part in my show, which you know, Adrian, that I do a show that's a tribute to my father. But there is, it's recognizing that, and if I may be so bold, your father is such a presence in your life, regardless of whether he's with us or not with us.
Right.
And you have to find a way to, it's a new kind of relationship. You know, you still have a relationship with your father, ever growing, ever changing, because as you learn and grow, I always wonder what my father would have said.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
He would have said, this is ridiculous, or he
Yeah.
would have laughed at me, or he would have. So to me, in some odd way, it's still ever changing and growing, but you have to get there. And also allow yourself your own process, because just because someone might say, well, Jamie, for God's sakes, it was 5 years ago. You know what? You do your way and I'm going to do
I'll do
my
mine.
way, because I don't know how to do it any other way.
Yeah, you're learning. Yeah, I mean, you're learning on the fly, right?
But it
And-
was a trigger. No, I'm not. I don't like the word trigger necessarily. This is not what I mean in this case. It was a catalyst for you to look at your overall health and to actually say, there's something not right upstairs. And I want to talk about it. That's brave.
Yeah, that part of it was tough, because again, my experience with my old family doctor was, here's some drugs and go on them. And
I don't think GPs should be allowed to prescribe psychotropic medication.
I mean, there's
that's
something
a whole
to
other
that.
show.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he had my best interest at heart, but it was very much like, this is going to fix the problem, and it's like, well, you don't even really know what the problem is, like, you're going to fix the symptom, I guess, but what's the problem, so just as a follow-up as well, my father was he's the first person in our family where we had him cremated and we didn't do a stone. So that was very interesting for me when you talk about the idea of Decoration Day is still like a big deal where I'm from, where you go to the cemetery and you decorate the stones of those you've left behind. And that was really strange for me not to have that in my life. My mother made that decision, and we scattered some ashes. And so for one of the things that I did, it was I got his, and it's led to interesting conversations because I got his birth year tattooed on my arm. And so that's 1945 is his birth year. And the interesting conversation that has led to was my mother was like, does that mean I'm going to be on your arm as well at some point? Yes, you will. yes, you will. That's going to be weird. But, and that's for me, I carry that stone, that representation with me. And we didn't always have the best relationship. He didn't necessarily understand where I was coming from, but, we had a different relationship, because I confounded and confused him. I'm sure, he was very blue collar, very practical. And, I've been creative my whole life and trying to figure out what my canvas is. And, that's been an interesting journey for me as well. And for him, that was just so confusing, right? Like, get married, have children, and enjoy your life. Don't be this tortured artist or whatever.
Thanks, Dad.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But then, and ironically, he acted as a catalyst to get you to doing the things that you're doing now.
That's what I think is so cool.
Which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about, the continuing evolution of relationships that we have with people been and gone. And, and I bet you, if you had this kind of relationship with your dad, he's somewhere saying, wow, look what just happened here. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Oh, he's definitely winking.
I'm never going to go on his podcast, but I get it. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know what a podcast is, right? I know that's what my dad would say, although my dad would be on your podcast.
That's so cool.
Well, I think that's... thank you for sharing that, because even, and I'm just going to say this, we were talking before we started recording that you weren't sort of 100% sure which piece of this, all of these moving parts of your story, of our lives that we all have, and to pull such a profound piece and tell it so succinctly, whether you meant to or not, it just came from you. I think that you've definitely taught us something, and you've taught the listeners something too, because I repeat what I said earlier, that there really is a lack of understanding between the two things, depression and being depressed, grieving and depression. Everyone gets depressed from time to time. Not everyone has depression. And until you pull those things apart, you're only doing half the job. And you can be so much more fulfilled. And by the way, one of the things that I learned from my dad, and the reason that I wrote my show, is I grew up in a household with manic depression, and I'm fine. I had a great childhood. I have bipolar disorder. I'm fine. I have a great life. And this is profoundly important to me, that the possibilities are there, but you have to pull it apart, and you have to look at it, and you have to do the work. Am I grateful for all of the support? Absolutely. And I know not everyone has that, but that's where we come in, and we try to at least be, something of a light for people to come and share, even if they don't have anyone else to share with. Is that too bold of a statement to make?
I don't think so. I think that that's exactly what what we're hearing here too is just is the to steal Jamie's tagline, the encourage courage.
I love it.
You know, and big and small, like that big step that you took in revealing your truth to this doctor who
Yep.
you're just meeting, and then he authentically sits down with you. You gave him that opportunity to help you, and I think that that's the hardest thing that we as individuals face is admitting that, is asking for help, that it's such a hard step for us.
Putting it out there.
Putting it out
And
there.
thank God he rose to the occasion, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know where I would be right now without it. Certainly not sitting across from you guys. I don't think.
Right?
It completely it was meant to be, but we don't know unless we have that courage. Encourage courage. Without it, you can't make any of the good stuff happen either.
Yeah.
So
And so I wanna know more about how we can listen to your podcast. Where is this Encourage Courage happening?
So if you go to Apple Podcasts and you search for, or on Google, if you search for A Show of Strength, it should direct you to www.ashowofstrength.com. And from there you can listen to the things, you can participate in the conversation. You can let me know if you've got a story that you want to tell, or, we can meet and talk, whatever. And we're available on all the Stitcher and Spotify and Google Play and all that stuff, all that good stuff. So,
And you have a live event too that happens, right?
yes, once a month. There's a show at the Social Capital Theater, the fourth Thursday of every month. And we call that Crazy Eights. And it's a safe environment for comedians that identify or have been diagnosed as mentally ill.
and I get to do it in July.
You're going to be showing up at the July show.
July.
Yeah. So.
It's a fun show.
Yes, I've been. It's great.
It really is.
I won a T-shirt. It was the best day.
And it really is. And that's another, there's just all kinds of great stuff that you're doing to throw out lifelines wherever you can.
Yeah.
And if this doesn't work, try this. And if this doesn't work, try this. And I think that's what we need to do for
Yeah.
everyone. So
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
encouraging
thank you, thank you.
courage.
Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Bye. I always have to say bye. Like, bye.
So long.
Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes and SoundCloud. And keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and let us know what you think. Until next time, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.